Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I stood quietly before Penelope's grave, looking down at the modest stone that bore only her name, a start and end date, the brief outline of her time here. Though the years had gone by since she passed, the weight of loss clung to me as sharply as if she'd left yesterday. My name's Luke Moore, a former officer in the Marine Corps Reserve. No lengthy introduction here, just the essentials. I joined the Marine Corps in 1975, just as the Vietnam era was coming to a close. Starting as a private, I served actively until 1987, then transitioned into the reserves. My first marriage didn't end well. Coming home from a 7-month deployment, I discovered my then-wife with another man, right in our home on base. If anything good came from that marriage, it was our 2 kids, Mike and Melissa. After moving into the reserves, I applied to officer candidate school and was fortunate enough to be accepted. With an electrical engineering degree in hand, I landed a solid job at an aerospace company that worked with the Department of Defense. It was there, at a corporate event, that I met Penelope, nearly a decade younger than me. From the first conversation, we just clicked. She became close to my kids, and my reserve status fit well with her lifestyle. As a reservist, I served 2 weekends each month, plus 2 weeks of training each year. After several months together, I proposed, and she happily accepted. Our wedding was everything I'd hoped for, with a full Marine Honor Guard in attendance. We set out to make a life together, and the first years were full of happiness. We tried to start a family, but our hopes were dashed. 2 miscarriages, and then an ectopic pregnancy. After that, the doctors recommended we consider permanent birth control. Although it was painful, we agreed and moved on. Sometimes we'd discuss adoption. When Desert Storm came around, I was newly promoted to captain and assigned to battalion staff. By 2008, after 2 deployments to Iraq, I returned to find our marriage struggling. By that time, I was a major, serving as the battalion's executive officer. Through all the years, Penelope had given me no reason to doubt her. She seemed as faithful as anyone could wish. We stayed connected at least twice a week by letter or email, even while I was overseas. Monthly phone calls were rare but treasured, and we made them happen whenever we could. Communication was tough during combat, but we did our best. I had faith that our love was solid and constant. Yet near the end of my final deployment, her letters came less frequently, and she was hard to reach when I tried calling. I dismissed it as a side effect of the war's pressures. I emailed her ahead of my return, giving her my travel details, and left voicemails but heard nothing back. I chalked it up to time zones, until I arrived home and saw no one waiting at the airport. I caught a cab, thinking I'd find her at home, maybe asleep. Instead, the house was silent. Too silent. No sign of Penelope, no strange car in the driveway, and nothing visibly out of place, but something felt wrong. On the kitchen table, right next to the coffee maker, was a note, just a scrap of paper with a few hastily written lines. "Sorry I missed you. Be at Riverside Drive at 11 p.m. tonight. Everything will be explained. Bring the chip." It was simply signed with a lowercase d. No warm greeting, no reunion, just this cryptic message, alongside what looked like a poker chip with the number 50 on it. Trying to stay optimistic, I thought, at least there's a note. Maybe Penelope had found work, something we'd occasionally discussed when I was away. It was only 9 in the morning, so I had time. Curious, I plugged the address into Google and opened the link tied to the location. As I read the screen, a chill crept through me. The address led to a rundown club by the docks called The Shadow Lady. It catered to an exclusive clientele, offering a members-only VIP lounge where explicit live performances were the draw. The website highlighted 4 star performers, one of whom went by Darla and bore the unsettling title Queen of the Gang Bang. A terrible suspicion crept over me. Could Darla actually be Penelope, my own wife? I scrolled back to Darla's profile on the Shadow Lady's website, noticing a clickable link on her photo. Against my better instincts, I clicked, landing on a page with preview images and video clips. I made the choice to watch, and what I saw left me sick with regret. It was her, Penelope, my wife of 47 years, engaged in acts beyond description, everything on display in the videos. Her sounds and the footage made it clear she wasn't just present, but fully invested in each scene. Beneath the videos was a grid of blue poker chips like ones I had at home, each numbered from 1 to 50, apparently for booking purposes. A note explained that anyone could reserve a spot for Darla's 4 weekly shows, meaning up to 50 men per night. I had no idea how long she'd been doing this. In disbelief, I shut down the computer, my mind spinning. How had Penelope changed so completely from the reserved woman I'd married? I knew our marriage was finished, but I needed explanations. I went to check the mail, hoping for something that might give me a clue. Only routine envelopes filled the box. Bills, insurance updates, nothing out of the ordinary. Then I checked my phone. One message caught my attention. A note from Dr. Marks at the base hospital, urgently requesting that either Penelope or I get in touch. I dialed right away, reaching him on the second ring. "Good morning, Major," he said. "Glad I could finally reach you." "I just got back from Iraq," I told him, "and haven't seen my wife yet. What's going on?" "Major, this isn't something to discuss over the phone. When can you come to my office?" he asked. I looked at my watch. I'd need a few minutes to get ready. "Give me a bit to freshen up and I'll be on my way," I replied. He thanked me, and I hung up, wondering what could be so urgent. I quickly dressed in my Class C uniform, adjusted my insignia and ribbons, put on my dress shoes, and grabbed my garrison cap. An hour later, I was seated in Dr. Marks's office. The elderly Navy captain who outranked me greeted me with a firm handshake. "Thank you for coming, Major," he said. He paused, then asked, "Forgive the personal question, but when was the last time you were intimate with your wife?" "About a year ago, just before I deployed to Iraq," I answered, thrown by the question. He opened a folder and pulled out a document. "3 months ago, your wife came in for blood tests. She tested positive for several STDs and we began treatment. But a later test result showed something more severe. She's positive for HIV. He passed me the paperwork. "We'll need a list of her partners from the past 4 to 6 months. I shook my head. That could be a difficult task. "Why do you say that?" he asked, concerned. "Because while I was away, Penelope seems to have started working as a performer," I explained. "I just discovered this today. Based on what I saw, she's likely been with more than 2,000 men in the last few months, and possibly without any protection." Dr. Marks's face went pale. "This could be a public health crisis. I'll need to inform the CDC immediately. Where has she been working?" "A club by the docks called the Shadow Lady," I replied. "She's scheduled for 4 shows a week and she's expecting me to be there tonight at 11. Major, for your safety, keep your distance. I expect authorities will step in soon and she may be hospitalized. Prepare yourself for what's ahead." With all the details compiled, he indicated that a thorough assessment would take a couple of days, 3 at the most. "I regret that you had to find out this way, Major," he said, his voice steady yet empathetic. "I know this wasn't the welcome home you anticipated." I pressed, "Is there any realistic chance for her recovery?" "Well, technically, yes," he responded, though the look in his eyes hinted otherwise. "But let's be honest, it's almost like a death sentence. Sure, we can try medication, but looking at her condition overall, it doesn't look hopeful. Our primary focus now has to be containing the infection." He paused briefly before adding, "One more thing, Major. I'm not trying to overstep here, but you know this is something the Corps doesn't take lightly. They have expectations for an officer's spouse, and right now she's not meeting them. It's challenging to lead in the field if there's disorder at home." I gave a nod as he went on. "The Corps will be observing how you handle this. I imagine your first thought is to cut her loose and proceed with a divorce." "Not an unreasonable guess," I replied. "Understandable," he acknowledged. "But given her diagnosis, that might push her to a breaking point. I know you wouldn't want that." "It's a tempting option," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "Major, this situation isn't easy, but there may be aspects you don't fully grasp. She might be under some kind of coercion, possibly drugs, maybe even blackmail. It could be worth considering a long-term care facility for her. Your insurance should cover it." He offered a moment's reflection. "Give her a chance to receive the help she needs. and think about what you want out of this situation. There's wisdom in tempering justice with mercy." "That's from General John A. Lejeune," I said, recognizing the quote. "It's about showing mercy without compromising discipline." "I understand, sir. Honor, courage, loyalty. It's clear." "Good," he replied with a nod. "Resolve this, but don't let bitterness guide you." We shook hands. "Thank you." "Semper Fi," he said with a firm smile. "Uhura," I replied. Dr. Mark then advised, more like ordered, that I get tested for STDs. Despite not having been intimate in over a year, he wanted me to do it for peace of mind. Following his advice, I provided the samples, then headed home, feeling queasy. With a few hours to spare before I had to be at the Shady Lady, I changed into comfortable clothes, grabbed a beer, and settled into my den to process everything. The weight of it all hit me, and unexpectedly, I broke down, releasing emotions I had been holding back for far too long. Marines have emotions too, after all. Eventually, I drifted into sleep, memories of the early, blissful years with Penelope filling my dreams. I woke up around 9:30, took a shower, dressed in jeans and a Marine Corps t-shirt, and headed out. By 10:45, I had arrived at the club, where a large bouncer blocked my entrance. I showed him a blue poker chip and mentioned that Darla had invited me. He gave a smirk of recognition and allowed me in. Navigating the bar's unfamiliar layout took a moment, but I found my way to the VIP section upstairs. The tables were arranged in a half circle around a big stage, with oversized screens overhead to ensure a full view from every seat. There weren't many people around, and I scanned the room for my wife. Instead, a heavy-set man with a receding hairline in a flashy pinstripe suit approached me, extending his hand in greeting and guiding me to a table. "So, you're Darla's husband," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I've wanted to meet you for some time." "Yes, I am. And you would be—" "Oh, where are my manners?" he said with a smile. "I'm Salvatore Giuseppe, the owner here," he introduced himself, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Why don't you join me for a drink?" A waitress, clad in little more than a skimpy thong, appeared at his wave, adding to the surreal nature of the evening. "What can I get you?" he asked, sizing me up with a keen, measured look. "A Bud Light," I answered evenly, and Salvatore nodded, pleased, before ordering himself a gin and tonic. His expression shifted as he leaned closer, setting the tone for a serious discussion. "All right, listen," he started. "I know who you are. A Marine with a reputation. I looked into you. 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, a Silver Star, Navy and Marine Corps medals. You've been through it all, from Vietnam to Iraq. People talk." He paused, gauging my reaction. "But let's keep this simple for both of us. No heroics. Agreed?" In a low, controlled tone, I replied, "Salvatore, I didn't survive 2 Iraq tours by being careless. I know I'm on your turf and you've got the numbers. I'm aware of the odds." He nodded, acknowledging my words, and I decided to get straight to the point. "What I don't understand," I said bluntly, "is how my wife became the main attraction at your club." Salvatore leaned back, a faint smirk crossing his face as if he appreciated my directness. He explained how Penelope started out as a waitress at his club. He didn't hide his interest in her, mentioning how seeing her in her skimpy work outfit stirred something in him. "Major," he said, his voice steady, "no offense, but your wife is an attractive woman. She's tempting, yes. But no, I haven't taken it further with her. I don't mix business with pleasure," he added with a shrug. "Still, she's good for business." Holding my anger in check, I struggled to keep my voice even. "How did she get involved with all of this? Was she forced, maybe drugged or blackmailed?" I demanded. Unfazed, Salvatore leaned in, unbothered by my intensity. "To be straight with you, yes, she was drugged once, but not by me," he clarified. "We record everything here, and yeah, it rattled her at first. But over time, she embraced it. For her, it became an escape. Now, she's all in. She makes good money from tips and even gets a share of the video sales." He casually placed a stack of DVDs on the table. "Consider these on the house. Normally they go for around $300 each." Horrified yet drawn in, I took the stack and leafed through it, each one displaying Penelope in scenes I could hardly process. I knew these could be useful if things moved toward a divorce. "How long has she been doing this?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. Unfazed, Salvatore replied, "About 8 months since she first started filming, 6 months since the group scenes began. She even does private shows now for VIP clients, government officials, CEOs, all types," he said matter-of-factly. A cold realization hit me, wondering about the risks tied to those high-profile clients. Noticing the blue chip I held, Salvatore pointed to it. "Penelope reserved a front-row spot for you tonight. Those seats aren't cheap. Consider it a VIP pass." I met his gaze. "Thanks for the honesty, Salvatore. But give Penelope a message for me. I'm not interested in being anyone's leftovers. Give this to someone else or keep it for yourself. I don't want it." I tossed the chip back on the table. He raised his hands, showing he'd said all he needed. "Anything else you need?" Sliding my wedding ring off, I placed it in his hand. "Give this to her. Tell her to think hard about what it stands for and meet me tomorrow. We need to talk." Salvatore's expression softened as he nodded in understanding. With the DVDs in hand, I shook his hand and left without another glance. I had no desire to see her on that stage, not like this. At home, I climbed into bed, but sleep was out of reach. The following morning, I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, waiting. She owed me answers, and this time, I would get them. The revolver sat silently on the table, next to a stack of DVDs from Salvatore and the recent results from Penelope's medical tests. I heard the familiar turn of her key in the lock, just as Penelope stepped into the room. She was barely a trace of her former self. Her body, once athletic and strong, now appeared hollow and frail. The strain of regret weighed heavily on her, almost as though she might break beneath its force. Her face bore the trails of recent tears. "Penelope," I said, the shock plain in my voice. "You look terrible. What's going on?" She moved toward me with a slow, weary gait, drained from her nights out. "I'm so sorry," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't bother explaining it away as just sex," I responded, my voice edged with anger. "It's more than that, and we both know it." Her eyes flicked to the revolver on the table, almost as if entranced. "What kind of gun is that?" she asked softly. "Are you going to kill me? Maybe I deserve it." I shook my head. "Don't be absurd," I replied. "It's illegal, not to mention unnecessary. You've already done enough damage, not just to yourself, but likely to countless others, right here within our marriage." I handed her Dr. Marks's report, which had arrived just the day before. "You have HIV," I said plainly. The weight of those words hit her like a hammer, and she collapsed into the nearest chair. "Oh God," she whispered, her face paling. "I'm going to die, aren't I? And you're going to leave me." Her gaze returned to the revolver. "I could end this now," she said, her voice trembling. "Listen to me, Penelope," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "I won't go through with the divorce if you agree to start treatment today." She looked up, stunned. You mean it?" she stammered, her eyes searching mine. "Yes," I confirmed. "I'll get you checked into a facility today. There's a lot more they can do for HIV now, and who knows, maybe even a cure is on the horizon. But it's not just about the medical side. You need counseling too. If you stay under my insurance, they'll cover what you need. So, I'll wait on the divorce." With fresh tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Thank you. I'm so sorry for everything. I promise I'll make it up to you." She moved toward me, reaching out, but I instinctively stepped back. The image of her with others froze me in place. Seeing my reaction, she looked down and nodded. "I understand." After a pause, she spoke again, her voice low. "Let me go back, get my things, and I'll be ready to go wherever you need." "Maybe that's not the best idea," I cautioned, but she was already reaching for the door, her resolve pushing aside any hesitation. My gaze dropped to the table where my wedding ring lay, left there by her, maybe deliberately. It was the last time I would see her. Later that morning, the news came. A police officer showed up at my door to deliver the details. Penelope had returned to the club, hoping to pack her belongings, and ended up facing Salvatore. She told him about her diagnosis and her plans to seek treatment. In a rage, Salvatore pulled his gun and shot her twice in the chest, once in the head. Afterward, the authorities, police, health officials, and even the CDC raided the club and shut it down. A shootout ensued, leaving Salvatore critically injured. That was 10 years ago. I've since left the force and spend most days out fishing. Yes, Penelope made terrible decisions, and I never had the chance to understand what led her down that path. I hold on to the good memories, though, and maybe one day I'll watch one of those DVDs. She was an unforgettable woman, no doubt. Maybe another woman will cross my path, someone who brings back a spark of joy. But marriage? That chapter is forever closed. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.